Coming up on our Finding Better podcast, we're going to talk about little things that make a huge difference. Nate Turner is joining me, and he's going to share his journey growing up in Gary, Indiana, with a dad who kind of didn't want him. And from that experience, Nate decided he never wanted to have kids until one day he saw The Lion King. Changed his life, changed his confidence, changed his desire to have kids. And boy, oh boy, did he become a great dad or what? Please listen. Please share this. Here we go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And this is where we share real life experiences on what we've done to find better in our own lives. We don't talk about opinions, we don't talk about theories, we don't talk about academics. It's all about experiences that we've gone through. And perhaps, some of the things that we've done in our lives or wish we didn't do in our lives are lessons that you might be able to apply to your own life, because sometimes the best path to success is to copy it. And so we're thrilled to have you. I have with me today, I have Nate Turner. And Nate is from just outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. And we're here to talk about parenting, building communities, how to make life better. He's had an amazing experience raising his own kids. And he's gonna talk a little bit about what he's done there. So, the thing about this is that yes, it is going to be about parenting, but it's also going to be about us. And as we grow up and I'm sorry, and Nate, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think all of us are messed up by our parents. And, in some way or another, I can tell you
Agreed.
for a fact that my kids. Okay, let me just say this first. I my kids are the kind of people I want to grow up to be when I grow up. Having said that, boy, have I screwed with them or what, right? Usually not intentionally. And I can't think of a time that I intentionally tried to screw them up, but
Right.
you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so my first question, Nate, is you've got all these letters behind your name. You got JD, you got MALS. What does that mean, first of all?
Well, again, normally I'm just Nate. That's the way it would
You're
appear on
just
my
Nate. There
screen.
you
But
go.
I show up in meetings with JAG, and people say, "What is that?" And I'm just a guy. So the letters are indicative of what you did in the past. So in the past, I went to law school and I earned a law degree. That's the JD. And in the past, long ago, I received a master's in liberal arts and sciences with a concentration in history and theology.
Oh, nice, nice. So I wanted to get right into this because, one thing I am really passionate about is parenting. And, I have found that it is so much harder to parent these days, right? Because you have so many different things that are going on that are pulling our kids away from us. And really make I'll just say one word, a couple of words: social media, right? Technology. But I want to talk with you about something that you shared with me, and you called it drawing lessons from the Lion King.
Mhm.
Now, I think everybody listening can relate to the Lion King. So let's get right into it. And I want to focus on you.
Sure. I hope Disney is listening too, because they need
Cool.
to invite me to do a parenting camp at Disney on the Lion King.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
let's affirm that. Without the Lion King, John, I would not be a father. It was there's no question about it. My I got married in on July 31st of 1993. About a year later, my wife said to me that she was ready to be a mother. She wants to start a family. I had a tumultuous relationship with my father growing up, and the last thing I wanted to do was repeat the failures of my father, who I believe my father repeated the failures of his father. And so
Yep.
I just
Yeah.
knew I was going to do a terrible job at being a father. And the best thing I thought for everybody was for me to avoid that altogether.
Oh,
Uh,
no kidding.
she insisted that she was ready to be a mother and warned me that her biological clock was ticking. I tried to tell her biological clock was digital, that she couldn't hear it. She did not buy that. And she took me to a movie. And unbeknownst to her, when I saw that animated movie, I realized that I could be a father. And that was The Lion King. And so without Mufasa and Simba, there is no Naeem and Nate.
No kidding.
Yep.
So, I mean, and did you know this when you walked out of the theater?
I didn't walk out the theater. Everyone else walked out. I sat in the chair and I cried probably for another 10 minutes because what I saw in that hour and 30 minutes or so, that animated story, was a story that I hope to be able to build with a child. I watched a father and a mother purposely wait. I believe it's 8 days. They waited 8 days to name a child. I watched a mother and father introduce their child to the village, and the village understanding that that child was one day going to lead, understanding my responsibility in raising a child was to raise someone who one day could lead. I watched the child do some things that the father didn't want him to do, but then come back together and sit on the father's shoulders and say, Dad, we're pals, aren't we? And I'm like, man, what a refreshing thing to do, to be able to discipline a child and the child still feel like you all are pals. So yeah, I saw in that hour and 30 minutes um, something that was life changing for me.
No kidding. What that is amazing. So let's talk about you first. Let's talk about you and your relationship with your dad growing up because
Sure,
I didn't have a tumultuous relationship with my dad, but I didn't have a good relationship with my dad.
sure, right, right.
And in some ways I kind of chalk that up to being normal, a father-son relationship. But I think we all grow up with the idea that a little bit intimidated of, I don't want to grow up and be like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you took it a considerable step further and decided that from that relationship and that experience, you didn't want to be a dad.
No, not at all. I think my father didn't want to be a father either, and I think that is perhaps the genesis of our issues. I'm going to say they're ours because I mean he's no longer with me,
Uh-huh.
with any of us.
Yeah.
But I think that's the genesis of his issue. My father, my father learned he was going to be a father, began to call this unborn child HAP, HAP, for mishap. That's the way my father saw me before I was here.
Oh my
And
God.
I understand the first several months of my life, that's the way my father referred to me as Hap. That was my unaffectionate nickname. And so I just think from the very beginning, that's not something he wanted to do. And look, I get it. Sometimes people
Yeah. Yeah.
end up doing things that they don't want to do. And maybe being a father was not what he wanted to do at the time. I completely understand that. So, um, kind of in essence, it is what it is. There's nothing I could do about it, but that's sort of where we started.
Well, I don't know what you were thinking and what you were going through after the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I can imagine. I mean, you're that beginning alone is such a huge difference from your father not wanting a child to now you being in a space that you want a child and
Yep.
you want to raise somebody who will be a leader and you got all that from Lion King.
A movie, an animated show. Yes,
Oh,
basically a cartoon. Yes.
yeah, now it makes me wonder, if there are people that are moved like that from The Little Mermaid, from Beauty and the Beast, and all. But so you um in that 2 hours, what happened? You saw a pattern that you could follow. You saw animated mentor that you
I
could.
saw I saw the possibilities for the planet. I
For
saw
the
I
planet.
saw well beyond just seeing what was good for my child. I mean, I
Yep.
think as a parent, and I guess we'll talk about it. I think as a parent, that's where a lot of parents forget what our responsibility is. And we're thinking about having children for our benefit. Children don't belong to us; they just come through us.
That's
And
right.
I think the best of us raise children who are going to contribute significantly to the planet. So I thought, as I watched Mufasa as an example, says, you've forgotten who you are, that he was raising the child to be a king. And I don't think enough of us raise children to dream audaciously, to understand how important it is for them to do something other than just be average. And those are the kinds of things that I saw in that movie. And I'm like, okay, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to raise a child who connects with the village, who the village connects with, that the village is responsible for, that he understands he's responsible for the village. He has to do something significant with his life other than just suck up air and oxygen. Um, and that's all that in the movie. In fact, afterwards, I think I wrote about 50 or 60 lessons that I extracted from the movie.
From just from the movie.
Yep.
No kidding. No
Yep.
kidding. And I mean that depth of thought is something like you said that I agree. I don't think most parents go to that level in their thinking. You said something that struck me. You said that a child who the village is responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
And you followed up by saying, and a child that knows they're responsible for the village.
Yes.
You know, years and years and years ago, when Bill Clinton was president, I remember he and Hillary saying it takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a village. And I thought to myself immediately, um, yes, it takes a village, but first it takes parents.
Mm.
First it takes parents. And so, it takes everybody,
It does.
right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying, it also takes the child, right?
Yes.
To understand and contribute back. And I agree with you 100%. I mean, uh, our kids are just loans, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
get them,
Indeed.
we
Indeed.
get them, we get them for a few short years, and you know what? Our job is, in my view, and I know you share this too. Our job is to raise them to be amazing people
Mm-hmm.
and make
Mm-hmm.
the world better,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So um, for those folks who are trying to figure, first of all, those folks who are thinking about being parents and don't know if
Right.
they can, go
Right.
watch The Lion King. Um,
Absolutely.
and right. But for those folks who are parents and maybe struggling with that, what are some of the insights that you've gained in your life as a parent?
I think the first thing I would say to any parent, the first thing I generally do say to a parent is I'd ask them what their hopes and dreams are for their children. I just say, hey, just take a minute. If the world and I also further by saying, followed by saying, if the world were perfect, then what? Because what I find it when I ask parents what are their hopes and dreams, the first thing people do is they start to put up obstructions. Start putting
Yeah.
up things that would, well, there's no point in me dreaming about this because this, and I'm like, okay, but if there are no obstructions and the
Right.
world were
Right.
perfect, what
Right.
is it that you would want for your child? That's the first thing I ask him. And then the second thing I ask him, what do you think you were made for? I borrow that from Barbie, but what were you made for? And if you can't do it, then who's supposed to do it? And then I just sit quiet and I just wait.
You know, I'm I'm almost stunned. I'm almost stunned. What were you made for? Right? From Barbie.
From Barbie. Yes.
And I'm part of it, part of my my shock is because those words rang true to me too
Right.
when I saw that show. And I totally, you know, I just blew off the show. When I heard about it, I'm like, whatever.
Whatever.
Until I heard somebody say, "Hey, Joe Rogan liked the movie," and I'm like, "What?"
Right.
Okay,
Him?
here's Joe Rogan,
Right,
this
right,
man's man, right?
right, right.
And I went to see the show, and I actually saw it the first time, and I watched it again. I watched it again because there are a lot of messages in that show.
Indeed.
And what were you made for? Um, last thing I want to say, and I want you to go on because this is just kind
Sure.
of right.
No, okay. Yep.
When you put it in terms of what do you want for your children? What are your dreams for your children? You know, I don't think, and I know very few people do that exercise even for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? What do
Mm-hmm.
you dream for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, they take up, well, I'd like to do this, but, no, take all that away.
Right. Yep.
Perfect world, so you've taken it, that's amazing. You've taken it to the next level that says, what are your dreams and what's your vision for your kids?
That's correct. That's where I would start. I start with that. I may ask parents sometimes if I've asked my son this, and I got criticized. I used to write for a couple times for the Washington Post and a site called the Good Men Project and others. But I wrote once about having asked my son to write my obituary. And folks were saying, well, why would you do that? And I said, well, because when my time on this planet is up, the person who's going to write it is him. And I'd like to know right now if I
Yeah,
am
that's
who
right.
I believe I am to him.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
there's this thing I call like these three levels of who, which is that first of all, we're not who we think we are. We're not who we believe other people think we are. We are solely who those we choose to be in relationship see us as being. And so
hey,
I could tell you, you could ask me, is it like if I break it down, you could say, well, hey, Nate, what kind of father are you? And I say, John, I'm the best father in the whole wide world. And you'd say, well, what does your son think about you as a father? I say, I believe my son thinks I'm the best father in the whole wide world. And then you say, well, can I talk to your son? And he said, oh, he's an absolute jerk. Then who am I?
yeah,
Right?
that's
All right,
right.
because I've defined myself as a father. That means that there's a child somewhere, which means the child also gets to identify who I am. And I think too frequently we in relationships with people and we don't ask the people we're in relationship with, are we who we think we are?
Oh, yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. I took a little bit of a different approach to my gravestone,
Okay.
and uh, I wrote it myself.
All right.
So I wrote my gravestone, and my gravestone says, "Here lies John, a good son, a good husband, a good father, a good friend, a man of
Okay.
God."
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't happen unless my family says it happens,
Right.
right? And if my family, I have to live it,
Yeah.
and that's the goal that I've set for myself. But I've told my family this is what I'd like, but if I wasn't, I
Right.
don't want it on there.
Trust me, they're gonna do what they want to do anyway.
Exactly, exactly.
But you are what I would call a word chaser. You're a word
What?
chaser. A word chaser.
Word
WRD,
chaser.
word chaser. You have affirmed who you want to be, and each day it's your responsibility to chase those words, to make those words manifest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess I am. I've never heard that term before.
Yeah.
But I do believe one exercise that I absolutely love is to write the book of your life before you live it.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea being, write down, write what you want the book of your life to be, and then go live it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Exactly.
it's kind of a different way of looking at what we're talking about. So
John, I do that. I was gonna say I do that every day. That's the first thing I do in the first 20 minutes of every morning. I write my life as I'd like it to be, not as it is. Every day. I call it journaling forward.
okay, talk about that, please.
Well, so the reason that I'm here with you today is because of this child that I have. Like there's no one in the planet that would think that I matter at all, which I understand that. I understand biblically, you get it. There are stories where so and so begat so and so begat so and so. And the only reason we know the so and so's who begat somebody is because the so and so way at the end did something that mattered. So
Right?
like I may not do anything that matter, but if I raise a child that matters, then I may be remembered. And even my father, who I had not had a good relationship with, I get to honor him every day by the way I live my life. He gets to live on. So one of the things I asked my son to do, he was small, he was running track and he ran by himself. He ran all over the country and he would run in these meets, but he'd be nervous. And I'd say, hey, start visualizing what you want to happen. And then I said, well, write it down. Write down how you expect the meet to go. And Johnny had tremendous success. He once finished second in the nation as an 800-meter runner as a 12-year-old. He finished fourth
Whoa.
once. We ran in a world meet. He ran in, I shouldn't say we, because I didn't run at all. He ran in a world meet. He placed fifth. And so he was very good. He left the country at 16 and moved to Brazil and played soccer. And so one day I'm at an event and I'm speaking, and there are other students like him who are getting ready to start a PhD program. And those students ask me, do you do all the stuff you ask your son to do? Namely, are you affirming each day what you want your life to be? And I was like, all great hypocrites. I said, no, I don't. so so I decided that maybe I should do that. And I've been doing that now since the fall of 2018. Each morning I do that. And we published a book and had an audio cast that we have online. And each day I write, my life is I'd like it to be, not as it is.
So, doctor, you healed thyself.
Right. Well, I don't know about that. Yes.
Well,
Yeah, I
you
don't know
took
about
your
that.
own
But
advice.
I'm working on, yeah, I'm taking advice. Exactly.
Wow. So let me take it a step further. So, one of the things that I'm getting out of this is really to think about the advice that I give to my kids and others, and audit myself and say and see.
Right.
'Cause you
Right.
know what? I like to think at least people tell me that I give great advice.
Right.
The only question is
Do you
whether I
follow
follow it or
it?
not
Right.
myself, right?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so what's happened as a result of taking the advice of your son's friends to take the advice you've given your son?
Yeah, a lot of really cool things. So I used to write about. So I not only I went took it to the additional step, which was that he would also create a vision board. So each semester, each quarter in his case, we would create a vision board of how he wanted the semester or year to go. So I had to do the same thing, and so I'd put things on there like I wanted to give a TED talk, and I wanted to go speak somewhere, and I wanted to speak in front of 10,000 people, and all these sort of things. And to this day, many of those things have come to fruition. And I don't believe that they would have if I wasn't chasing my words, like I mentioned to you. Every
Yeah.
day I'm writing about these things. I'm a best-selling award-winning author, and I'm not a best-selling award-winning author yet, but every day I write that. Once upon a time, I wrote I was going to be a particular weight, and I lost 35 pounds and got to the weight that I said I was going to be. I mean, but yeah, every day I do that. I'm not going to owe anybody, and I don't owe anyone, and I'm not going to own anyone. So I've been very conscious about the decisions that I make economically that might impact someone else's life because of how interconnected we are as consumers. And so, yeah, that's what I do. I've written I write things, and then I chase those things that are right.
So for folks who are listening, and I think this can be absolutely huge, right? Because you have found that to be so worthwhile that you do it all the time now. It's
Yes.
become part of you. I can imagine that there might be folks out there going, oh no, yeah, I mean, I live in this circumstance, I live in this neighborhood, I've got this going on, and I can't. It's just not something that's possible for me. What do you say? How do you advise them, and
Yeah.
how do you inspire them?
Well, and again, as a person thinking their heart, so are they. So I would tell people, if you don't believe it, then you're right. It won't happen. And if you do believe it, then you're right. It will likely happen. But the outcome is less of the issue for me. It's more of the process. It's more of, am I doing my part? I can't ask, the creator, God, the universe, whatever, the power, whatever someone decides to believe in. I can't ask anything to assist me if I'm not willing to assist myself. And if I'm not willing to even think about the possibility of that being a reality, well, then in my mind, I've proven to the whatever power that's bigger than me that it's not that important. Because it's not important enough for me to think about it and write it down. Then why would anyone move a mountain for me when I won't move a pen? I won't press a keyboard. So it just feels like part of my obligation to do that for my own best life.
It's as you were talking, what kind of occurred to me was that you you raised your son to always have possibilities in front of him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Said differently, you raise your son in a world of abundance. Because you know this,
Yeah.
any
Mm-hmm.
person, any one of you listening can look at the world as a world of abundance or a world of scarcity. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, most people I've encountered really do look at the world as a world of scarcity. But what you did with the vision boards and with the things that you did with regards to, yeah, what do you want your life to look like? What do you want school to look like? What do you want to accomplish today? What do you want the end of your day to look like?
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
Your son probably doesn't have blinders, probably doesn't have, I mean, everybody does,
Sure. Yeah.
but in terms of having a mindset of limitation, that's not there.
Yeah. Yeah. The coolest story I could tell you is so at the time he's a junior in high school,
Hmm.
and my wife, he and I, we go out to Vegas. Nobody gambles, so we're in this hotel, and they've gone to see a show, and after a while, people are like, "What else can we do in Vegas?"
Right,
So we
right.
look in the Grand Canyon's nearby, and we rent a car and we drive out to the Grand Canyon.
Hmm.
And Naeem is my son's name. We just finished reading The Alchemist, and we'd also read Timothy Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, and he's standing on top of the Grand Canyon next to me. And my wife, Latanya, is behind us, and she's yelling and screaming at us to get away from the edge. And I'm like, man, forget her. How do you feel right here? He's like, dude, I feel alive. I say, yes, because everything good in life happens when we are willing to be on the edge. I said, everything, there's danger here, but there's great opportunity on the edge. You can't live your life always playing it safe. He said, yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. Which is why next semester, after I finish my junior year, I'm not going back to high school. You need to get me out of here. I need to leave the country.
What?
See, right? And I said, huh? He said, you know, my dream is to play professional soccer. And I don't want to play soccer in college. I don't want to play soccer in the United States. My dream is one day getting into La Liga and playing in the same league where Messi is playing. I said, okay. He said, so you got to figure out how to make that happen.
Get away
So
from the
you're
edge. Get away from
right.
the edge. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So to your point, he's telling me all the stuff I've been saying, and he's been saying, do you really believe what you've been telling me? Because you said anything is possible. Now I've told you what I need to happen, and I need you to figure out how to make it happen. And so
Whoa.
I did. I read the 4 Hour Work Week. I got introduced to virtual assistants. I found a virtual assistant. His name is Nathan. I wrote Nathan. I sent him my son's soccer resume and some video and so forth. And then he shopped it and found 11 clubs across the globe who said bring him in for a tryout. We found a club in Brazil, found a gentleman in Brazil named Mr. De Lima. He invited us, Miguel De Lima invited us to Brazil. We went to Brazil on June 19th, 2012, and stayed a week with Mr. De Lima. And we were in various parts of Brazil. And he played soccer with the kids in Brazil. And we never saw him more excited than ever playing soccer. And he said, I'm cool, I'm staying. And the following month, we packed him up and he moved to Brazil.
You're not kidding.
I'm not kidding. So when we returned from visiting, he and I, his birthday is June 27th, and he and I were sitting in the car. I'll never forget. We're sitting in the car, and he's looking at me, and I'm crying. And he said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Man, I don't know what I didn't plan for this to happen, for you to get here this quickly." He said, "Well, Dad, like what's the problem? What are your dreams?" And I said, "I don't have any. All I've ever dreamt about was making sure your life was good." And now, as a 16-year-old, you've finished all your high school credit. You're just a junior, but you got 33 college credits. You speak 4 languages. You've started your own foundation. She said, Dad, I've done everything you asked me to do. You tested in the top 1%, and you don't want to go to college now. You want to lead the country. And we've just figured out how to make that happen. And you're about to go. And I have no idea what I'm supposed to do now. And he said,
Oh, wow.
Dad, do for everyone else what you've done for me. And that's how I'm here, because the child gave back.
No kidding.
When Rafiki is holding Simba out over the village, the child later on tells the person in the village, okay, Here, let me give you something so you can get your life together.
Wow. Wow. Now, is your son still in Brazil?
No, sir. He is currently in Jersey City. He's in his second year of his MBA at NYU. He returned in the fall of 2014. He had a concussion and
Oh, no.
decided he had enough of living on his own, playing soccer. He traveled to Germany for tryouts in Germany and came back home, applied to 31 of America's top engineering schools, got into 27 of them, went to school at Santa Clara University for his undergrad, got his degree in electrical engineering and a minor in computer science, computer engineering, got 7 PhD offers, went to Carnegie Mellon on a full fellowship, finished there with a PhD in electrical and computer engineering. And then he applied to business school and got four four scholarships, but got a full ride at NYU. So he's at NYU with a focus on quantitative finance and entrepreneurship. So
Okay, so I understood maybe six
you
of all the
understood
words
all
that
of
you
that.
just yeah. So, but impressive for sure. Um, so um, what? Okay, and I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear you say it in
Okay.
in your words. So the success of your son, if you were to wrap it up in a bow, what were the three things that led to his success?
Oh, that's easy. Intellectual ambition, global and cultural competency, and a focus on being a humanitarian.
And you guided him through every step.
Found an application from Harvard, looked on the application from Harvard and realized Harvard was looking for three things. That was our the institution we were going to try to make sure he had an opportunity to meet the qualifications of before he was born. And in that application, of course, Harvard looks for great grades, but we changed that to intellectual ambition because we think it's short sighted to only think about grades and test scores.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure he understood how to think critically and teach them Socratic method and others. Then we wanted to make sure he was global and culturally competent, so he could speak a number of different languages, but understood other people's cultures, so he could understand the connections between people and not seeing people as distant, but seeing us more close as we are. And then lastly, wanted to make sure he cared for something greater than himself, which was the humanitarian piece.
If all parents out there just picked
Mm-hmm.
one of
Just pick
those,
one. The
right?
yes.
And you did all this by design. You
Mm-hmm.
didn't you did this proactively. I mean, you just said that you looked at Harvard's ent accept
Application.
application,
Mission. Mm-hmm.
yeah, admissions application
Yep.
before he was born.
That's correct. That's correct.
So folks, that's called that's called planning.
But John, so like I always tell people, like the reality is when you're from where I'm from Gary, Indiana originally. The CDC, Centers for Disease Control, says there are 10 what they call adverse childhood experiences, and they threaten not only a person's life, but their ability to do anything productive. If you have more than three, you're more likely to end up in jail on drugs, involved in prostitution or something of that nature. I have eight of those 10 things.
8 of 10.
8 of 10. My wife has 7 of 10. Collectively, we have 9 of those 10 things. So, in my mind, when people come from that background, if they're going to have a child, then we have to be proactive. Otherwise, we're just going to repeat the very things that
Absolutely.
didn't work. So, I'm like, okay, what our parents did in many ways didn't work. We're here in some ways in spite of that. But moving forward, we owe the next life something better than just sort of a happenstance. So
Always.
let's plan, see what can happen.
Okay, so you grew up in Gary and Indiana.
Yes.
Okay. I've never been there, but I've heard
Okay.
of it.
You've heard of it. Yes.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I mean, it's not Bel Air, put it
No,
that way,
no, it's not. It's not
right?
Bel Air. No.
Um, and so, one of the things I mean, that just strikes me. That's just crazy. Because so many people are victims of their circumstance and they allow themselves to be victims. One of the things I try to share with people is, um, you know, the way you avoid victimhood is you take responsibility for your life. You don't blame other people because the moment you blame somebody else is the moment you're giving them your power.
Absolutely.
And I wrote a book. I wrote a book about the Japanese American concentration camps and guys who refused to be victims. And they went off to war during World War II and became some of the most decorated war heroes in U.S. history. They refuse to blame, they refuse to be victims.
Hmm.
Here you are. And I think of Gary, Indiana, and I go, how, and your dad um, was not a great role model for you, right? What do you
Right.
tell all those people out there who are I can't because I've got this going on and this is in my way. And what do you say with the life that you've lived?
In relation to my life, I think I understand I'm responsible for other people. So as all of the bad that happened with my father and I could spend all my I realized I could spend all my life focusing on all the bad stuff. But I
Right.
also have to say there has to be some good in my father in
Yep.
order for there to be some good in me. And so I'm like, okay, let me find the good stuff in my father. So like here's an example. My father wanted to name me, he wanted to name me Malcolm. I was born in 1965, shortly after Malcolm X was assassinated. My mother, being a staunch Christian, was like, absolutely not. I'm not naming my child Malcolm. But my father's second favorite historical figure was Nat Turner. So unbeknownst to my mother, he says, well, let's name him Nathaniel. In my mother's mind, Nathaniel is Hebrew, meaning gift of God. So my father names me Nat because he wants me to be a revolutionary. My mother wants me to be a gift of God. So, so, so I don't know if either one of them got what they were looking for, but but my father was also a guy who did not have a father. So I know he was flying blindly. And I've chosen to say with grace and mercy that my father perhaps did the best he could do with the tools that he was in the hand that he was dealt. And so was he there? Yeah, he was in my home. A lot of fathers were not. Did he teach me some valuable lessons? Absolutely. I've been an entrepreneur now for 30 years. I would not have been an entrepreneur except for the father who told me as a 9-year old when I wanted to get my new 10 speed as a 10-year old that he was not buying it and walked me to the garage, pointed to the rake, the shovel, and the lawnmower and said, if a man wants to eat, a man has to work.
There
I'll
you
loan
go.
you the money for the first tank of gas. You got to pay me back. And then if you want the 10 speed, figure out how to get it yourself. And within 2 months, I had the money to buy the 10 speed. So those are all like wonderful lessons. I'm not ever afraid of anybody because the person who was most terrifying to me lived in my home and I wasn't afraid of him. So there's no need to be being afraid of anybody else. So yeah, I decided to find the good in my father. I'm imperfect. We all are. And if I want people to see beyond my imperfections, I have to first see beyond other people's imperfections, including my father's.
That's amazing. And there's good in everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one can, I mean, it's good, bad,
Yep.
hot, cold, everything.
Yep.
And again, it goes back into your mindset of we talked about abundance versus scarcity, and it's I had the same kind of experience with my working my way mentally through my relationship with my dad. And I mean, everything comes good with good and bad. And one of the things that I learned from an old pastor of mine was that no matter how bad you think something is, there's always something good that can be
Yes.
taken of it and
Yep.
or taken from it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if and this is to my audience, you folks, think about it. Think about it. With every limitation, there's an opening somewhere. With every limitation, there's an opportunity.
Yep.
But you have to have the mindset to look for it.
Two
And
sides to every coin.
Nate, as you said, right, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, whether it's with God or Jesus or the universe or
Right.
whatever
Right.
you want to call it,
That's right.
right? Um, Seek it I love what you said that it ain't going to help you until you're ready to help yourself.
Hmm. Yep.
You
And,
know,
and and again, I've learned these lessons. I think as an adult, I've learned them. They've been cemented by relationship with a child. Because I used to say to my son when he would only want to succeed, I said, son, without valleys, and if all you want are peaks, then all land is flat,
that's right. That's true.
right?
That's true.
Because you won't know a peak unless you know a valley.
That's
There has to be a point where you come down, and that's the valley. So, and now he knows that now. We talk about all the time. Whenever he has a peak, I'll say, you know what's next? He said, yeah, a valley. So, so might as well get prepared for it. You cannot stay at the top forever.
that's
You
right.
have to come down. And if there's a higher peak you want to reach, which we generally do, you have to come down and go back in the valley to go back up. So that's the two sides to every coin.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And said differently, you can't have success without failure.
That is correct.
And
No.
you know, people fear failure. You know, I try to teach my kids, you know what? The only time that you fail is when you don't learn something.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get back up on that horse, right? And
That's
even
right.
then, you know, there's something there's something good that you can get out of it,
That
right?
is correct. That's
And
correct.
so that is amazing. That is amazing. Well, I'm personally I'm inspired. Um, and I hope there's a lot of folks out there who will also gain some inspiration from you. Um, and thank you for sharing. I mean, I'm I'd love to have you back, Nate, because
Please, anytime.
you know there's I mean you are just you're just so full of experience. You know, I didn't say wisdom. I didn't say knowledge. It's experience, and I guess experience is wisdom.
right.
But yeah, this has been a really wonderful learning experience for me. And you know, it's one of those things. Boy, I wish I knew you 30 years ago.
Well, I wish I knew me 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
so, I mean, hopefully in 30 years I'll be different. I'll be
That's
better. Like
right.
that certainly is the goal. Each day, each
Exactly.
new day is an opportunity to be better than yesterday.
You know, one takeaway is, folks, every day, Nate takes 20 minutes and he writes down what he wants his day to look like.
That's right.
You know, I
That's right.
mean, you talk about micro goal setting, but holy cow, right? I mean, if you do that every single day, I mean, what is that? What's the difference in that trajectory of your path that you're anyway?
Yeah, no, it's quite helpful. I'm a guy who suffered with depression, and it's helpful because it doesn't depression is typically about where you were and your fear about where you're going. But when you're writing in the moment about and imagining your best life and doing it emotively, all of that goes away.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Okay, folks. Nate, do you have anything else you want to share
I
at
just
this?
want to tell you I'm grateful. So I'm grateful that you took time to speak to me today. I really am.
Oh my
It's been an
gosh.
honor to be with you.
I am so grateful. In this season of Thanksgiving, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being so willing to share your life and your background. Because there are folks out there who are listening who are gonna make some changes. I know it. I know it.
All
And
right.
and changes for like I said, amazing differences in the path that they're gonna
It
take.
just takes one. I believe that's what I heard you say.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It just takes one. So, Nate, thank you. Thank you again for joining me. Happy Thanksgiving. I think Thanksgiving was last week by the time I get this out. But anyway, happy holidays, folks out there. Please share this, especially with folks who have kids, are thinking about having kids, and you know you're going to help them. You're going to help them. Please share it. So with that, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for joining me. Nate, until next time, thanks again, and
Thank you.
God bless.
God
Okay,
bless you.
see ya.